the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Woke AF.
If you've got a tip from Melissa, a recollection that's been haunting your dreams, a dream that awakens a recollection, whether it's actually possible to win an argument on Facebook, anything, tell us about it by calling the Tip-Ster hotline at 832-TIP-STER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. You just might hear your tip on the podcast. And now here's your host, counting to 10 before yelling at another public information officer for not returning her calls, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. Yeah, sometimes the PIOs are a big pain in my ass.
Yeah, the
so
PIOs
are PIA.
Yeah, PIOs are PIAs, man.
Pain in my ass. And I don't want to come down on all of them because I'm sure some of them are fine, but I haven't found any of them yet. But yes, thank you, Producer Mark, for the winning an argument on Facebook. God bless you. I choose to not talk about politics or religion because I don't want to lose friends or influence enemies. I don't know. I just don't. All I want to do is use it for, as my socials, as my social needs where I can talk to my friends who don't live down the street and that, Anyway, so I love that because I have had more bullshittery happen with Facebook than, but it's such a gift. It's such a gift. And it allowed me to track down and haunt Todd Matthews, who is our guest today.
Right.
I found him on Facebook after, being a fangirl for so long. And he is just a remarkable human being you're going to hear in this interview. We covered the case that he's most known for, the Tent Girl, in our 8th episode. And I think, is going to be the interview on our 126th or something episode. Yeah.
This is 126.
Yeah. So, we've come a long way. I'm not exactly embarrassed of that episode, but it's, I wouldn't call it my favorite. But I hopefully got some of the details in there. But
you did. It was I re-listened to it the other day. It's very good.
It's not that good, but
we did a good job.
Fine.
Come on.
Yeah, you always do a good job. I've you grow and you change. It's been a couple years now, so things are different. But Todd has always been one of those people in my mind, like, gosh, that guy. And he just is even more remarkable than I could have imagined. You like to think that someone's, a stellar human being, and he is just that and a bag of chips. He's all of it. He is a regular guy where we're getting ready for the interview, and he's like, "Oh, hold on, I need to get a battery for my wife." And I was like, "This is the guy. This is the guy who's, still married to his high school sweetheart. They have, kids and grandkids, and he, all the while is moving forward in his life and is doing things that are, life changing for others and himself too. You can hear, and I love that he is humble, and yet comfortable in his own skin. He knows who he is, and are we grateful there's a Todd Matthews in this world.
I forget. He really is one of the inventors of modern day, private sleuthing.
Yeah.
He if you listen to the Tent Girl episode, you see what happened and how he just decided to find there's no need for him to do it. There's no real reason for him to do it other than to identify
as he says, bring her home.
Find the identity of a young woman who was murdered and found on the side of a road.
Right.
And in the process, really invent what people are doing all the time now.
Yeah.
What Melissa's doing, what you Tip-Sters are doing, what all of us are doing now. He was one of maybe the first to really dig in and do it. And a wonderful guy.
Just a spectacular human being. I couldn't be more happy. I'm so glad that he is even better than I thought. I didn't really know what to expect, but it turned out to be even better than I thought. He is a fantastic, fabulous human, and he has a lot of great projects in the works. And I think all of us are going to benefit from those because he is a force of nature. There's no other way to put it. He is a force of nature. I really hope you enjoyed this interview with Todd Matthews. I am so excited, you might be able to hear it in my voice, that we have Todd Matthews with us today because I am going to try and control myself, but I'm going to be a complete fangirl and say, oh my God, Todd Matthews, you are a rock star. You are a badass rock star, and I'm so happy you're here today.
Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence. I really do.
Well, you don't need my vote of confidence, because you have so many people who are in awe of what you do and are appreciative of what you do, and you've received so many commendations and awards from law enforcement, from search agencies. I mean, I bet you're just about tired of telling your story, but I can't help it. It's such a fascinating story. I know you've probably told it. You can do it in your sleep, and I'm just grateful that you're, awake right now, because your story is so spectacular, and whether people know it or not, you are a huge influence in the world that I live in, which is, hosting a true crime podcast. And I'm sort of a nosy Nelly, and you're like the real deal. You're the real deal. And do you ever get tired of hearing someone say you were the first internet sleuth, or is that okay?
That's okay, but it's a lot to live up to here. So that's what it is. When you meet people from the community that truly know some of the things that we've worked on over the years, like most of the people I talk to daily don't. They don't have an idea of the background and the world that you and I kind of live in. But, then you do meet the people that do kind of understand what it takes to put a show together like you guys do, and there's a lot of work to it.
Well, it takes a village. I always say it takes a village to get anything really done. But there's a village where I feel like you're the mayor. I feel like Todd is the mayor of this village, who, I don't want to make it sound, cheap or just like a nickname, but you really are kind of the father of internet sleuthing. I mean, it's amazing what you did in a time where it was not easy like it is now. You did things that you were on the ground, organic, authentic, boots on the ground. You were doing it. But let's, just in case there's one person left on earth who doesn't know the story, let's take a little step back. So producer Mark and I were watching an episode of Who Killed Jane Doe, and I'm just sitting there with my mouth open, and I'm like, this man is what I want to be. This man did what I just can't even imagine a private citizen doing this. And it started when you were so young. You're this 17-year-old kid in Tennessee, and you're dating the beautiful Lori, and you're sitting around her kitchen table. Is that the way it went? And your future father-in-law, Mr. Riddle, is like, I have to tell you about this story?
Well, actually, it was, of course, it was October, so it was Halloween, and Lori ended up in one of my study halls. Maybe somebody manipulated that. But
so you're the guy that gets shit done. That's just it, even at a young age.
Yeah, you can sweet talk people into just about anything. But she did, and we were telling ghost stories because it was Halloween, and then Lori started off with Tent Girl because there were a number of stories. Ghost stories that were around that, because Tent Girl at the time was an urban legend.
Wow.
You really tell if it was a real story or not, or it was a boogeyman story of, if you're not careful, this could happen to you. And it seemed like, I thought, is this real or not real? And what she was telling me was a description from her father that he had told them growing up. And then I went home with her, and we looked at the Master Detective magazine, the very embellished version of it that was an interview. So it was very... If I'd read just the Master Detective, I might have thought this is a made-up story.
Right.
Because it took a lot of creative license with his, it changed his name. But Wilbur and Lori's story filled in all those gaps and made it a reality. So it was, at 17 years old, that was something that really altered me.
It had to, yeah.
Well, it was like I heard the story and it was familiar. When I saw Lori, for lack of a better word, I feel like I recognized her.
Wow.
And it wasn't one of those love at first sight things like, oh, the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, which she's a very beautiful woman. It was more than that. It was deeper than that. It was recognition. It's like you go across her and you find somebody you recognize.
Wow.
And I literally had a friend that was sitting right beside of me. I said, that's the girl I want to marry.
Wow.
And I did, wow, that's the girl I want to marry. It was like,
It was
stream of consciousness. I just said it because it was a fact.
right. It just felt the natural thing to say. It wasn't like you were being overly romantic. It was just, like you said, a fact. That's
and
amazing.
My consciousness changed that day.
I
You know,
believe
you all
that.
go through a childhood, and you're 2, and you're in awe of this and awe of that. But that moment, that day, my reality changed somehow. I don't know. I know when people have a stroke or they have something ominous that's happened to them, it changes things a little bit. Your perspective changes. Your consciousness changes. Mine changed that day. It changed dramatically.
I believe that completely. It was like everything got rewired.
It is, and it was just like components flipped on that weren't on until that point in time.
It got plugged in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plugged into
I think that was the day I become an adult. I think that was the day I am now an adult man and not a child.
I believe that completely. And at the age of 17, that's a pretty amazing awakening right then. So you're talking to Lori, and who you feel like you've, known forever. And her father, Mr. Riddle, is saying, hey, I was looking for these glass insulators. I guess you would find them and you could sell them and make a lot of money. Is that how it works?
Well,
I don't know.
They were antique even in the 60s. They were from the 20s and 30s, so they were something. And the telephone line, the internet was coming through basically, but it wasn't the internet. The lines that the internet was carried on was coming through that area.
Right.
30 years later.
Yeah, it was telephone. Yeah.
So they were just dropping the useless insulators as they were using a different type of material then. So they were just dropping on the ground. He just picked them up. He thought, wow, these are beautiful. They're beautiful. They're
green glass or something.
Green and blue, and they're just brilliant colors.
Yeah.
And, I've got several of them now.
Oh,
I
wow.
found garage sales, flea markets, and people have given them to me. I've given them to people. Special happens with somebody, and it's like, I want you to have this one.
That's beautiful. That's
so
really
become very symbolic of
totally.
Of the glass insulator.
Of her being found. I mean, Mr. Riddle finds something wrapped in a big, green canvas, and I've always thought it was interesting that she got the name the Tent Girl when she actually wasn't in a tent. It was the canvas that they put tents in. It was very. She wasn't.
She was in there like she was a tent,
Right.
And that was a good name that stuck with her, I think, because I think that gave her a reality.
Totally.
Doe number 4.
Yes, exactly. It
made her an urban legend because of that catchy name.
Because of that name. Yeah.
Well,
no, I agree.
Tacky at times when you see some of the names that they will attach to a body. I've heard people say that's kind of a tacky. But I think that's in place of their name. It's meant to be a term of endearment from people.
Yeah,
it's not meant to be just something, tacky or
no. It's informative. I mean, we covered a case a while ago with Valentine Sally, and she was found on Valentine's Day, and I don't like that name, but I also think it's so much better, like you said, than Jane Doe number 487. So yeah, I think Valentine Sally, the Tent Girl, those are names that you're going to know what you're talking about when you mention that. So Mr. Riddle says, this is what happened, and 17-year-old totally awakened Todd Matthews is like, I am going to find out about this. So he finds her on May 17th of 1968. You're not even born yet. And so this is like the 80s, and you're talking with Lori and Mr. Riddle. When did it start where you are like, I'm going to take this seriously and really work on it?
Well, immediately I knew that there was something very significant about that story because, like I said, there was a different level of consciousness that was going on. It's like she was familiar, not just Lori, not just that family. Tent Girl was a familiar story. I've heard this before, but there was no way. I've looked at every different way could I've heard that story before she brought it to me. There was no medium that it could have been brought to me.
Right.
But this is oddly familiar.
A recognition. Yeah.
Well, you felt like you were already part of it.
Yeah.
It's like this is somebody that I'm going to know or something.
It's going to be important. Yeah.
Yeah, it was too important. And then when I would try to work on it or get discouraged because, the internet was very different, and originally it was drive up there. I had to go see the grave. I had to, just to get that reality, and you see it and you touch it and you think, this is
real.
This is real.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. And then you get, there was times over the years that you get very disgusted. It's like, wow, I have beat myself up trying to do this.
Right.
And then I'm done. I'm not going to do anything. And then you get that guilty feeling. There was literally a feeling of guilt for not doing the work to try to identify her. It was like, I'm supposed to do this. Like,
right.
This is your destiny calling you.
Yeah.
Are you going to open the door or walk away?
Right. And apparently that door was not going to let you walk past it. You didn't have a choice.
There really was no choice.
Yeah.
It was like it just kept creeping back in, and it was never out of malice. Like, I'm tired of this. It was
right.
The resources back in, a long-distance phone call. I would get a phone bill, and I'd literally hide from Lori.
Of course.
Phone bill, and it was like 10 cents, 15 cents a minute. And we're back in the days, many, many years ago where I wasn't making very much an hour at the time. It's like factory work. It's minimum wage at the time. And you get a phone bill for $53, yeah. And now we take it for granted now.
Of course.
All the tools that I didn't have back in the day, like unlimited free long distance.
Right.
We don't even think about it anymore. But back in the day, it was like, oh my God, I got to figure out a way to pay for postage, or I got to figure out a way.
Right. Yeah, you wrote letters. Yeah, you wrote letters to law enforcement to the coroner in Kentucky, and you spent a lot of money on long distance phone calls. You traveled there to, like you said, see her grave. I mean, this wasn't just like, you weren't like a casual hobbyist. This was something that was obviously going to be pretty big in your life, and it absolutely turned out to be, so much more than, we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude. But I know that the Hackman family, the sisters are more, I don't even know if they can express their gratitude toward you. But so we know it takes a village. So Mr. Riddle is part of the village. Lori's part of the village. You're the mayor. Whether you know it or not, you got elected the mayor. And you are, one of my favorite stories is that you went to a lecture with then, was he a senator, I guess, Al Gore? And it went to hear him talk about the future of the internet. So you saw something. I mean, I thought the internet was for like playing games and finding people to go on dates with. I didn't think about the, so here's the difference between me and you. In 1997, I'm registering melissamorgan.com so nobody else can have my name. And Todd is registering tentgirl.com because he's, altruistic and and not selfish.
Well, describe the internet. That was the thing. And Al Gore was once, he was vice president at the time, and I know he didn't invent the internet. A lot of people said that, but I mean, he did grease some of the financial wheels that helped us in place. And he was in our hometown when he was called to be vice president, running mate, and I remember because I traveled the highway to go see some of the data physically. And when somebody said information superhighway, I caught the word highway. And it's like,
interesting.
That's a way of doing this. So it was so I wasn't seeing the internet as like, oh, wow, this new thing. It was just like, oh, a tool that I can use. Pictures, you can transfer pictures, and I don't have to put them in an envelope and lick a stamp and send it to somebody. But that world was still a way off, So in my imagination, it was supposed to happen immediately. Everybody would have a website. It's like there were still many years that law enforcement agencies didn't have it.
Well, that's because you're a forward thinker, and like I said, I'm in 1997. I registered my own name so nobody else could have it, and you're like, oh no, this is a tool to help me find information about who this unidentified person is.
But that's important, and that's fascinating because I think a lot of listeners who are so used to the internet and the way the internet works now, you can just instantly connect to a Wi-Fi signal and instantaneously get information. Back when the internet first came out, we were still all using index cards and making phone calls over landlines to do research, going to libraries, and it was hard work.
It was very hard work that Todd was doing, and I mean, really, really hard work that he kept he kept up. Like he said, he, would take some time off. Sometimes he would be frustrated when he wouldn't get the information he needed. But I mean, to me, it makes so much more sense now hearing it come from you that this was a much bigger thing than just a guy with, something he's obsessed with wanting to work on and solve, because the details that you were able to see the micro and the macro. So you saw the big overhead view of, hey, the internet is going to be a tool that is going to be helpful to link people far away from each other immediately and get information where I don't have to, try and figure out how to pay for a phone bill or try and figure out how much it's going to cost to mail something, and wait for weeks to get a response. You saw the macro, but the micro, the details that you saw, thought that were important and turned out to be, are the things that one of the things that make me just adore you and have such respect for you. Like, I would imagine quite a few people in law enforcement looked through the case file and saw she had a towel on her shoulder. Big fucking deal. And here's Todd. You know what? A towel on her shoulder. I wonder if she has a baby. That's what moms use when they, are burping their babies. And I was like, holy shit. It takes a man who, is a husband and father to see something that could be such a big deal. And it turned out to be a big deal.
I mean, it worked. I mean, some talk of it possibly being a cloth diaper, and I wore cloth diapers. My mom, put me in cloth diapers, and we still had some of those diapers, and she would use them for, like, dust towels and stuff.
Right.
So, and I remember back and looking at them, like, Mom, let me see my diapers. And she said, well, there's a dust cloth in the drawer. That's one of your old diapers. And I remember looking at it and just thinking, oh, my God, this is what this is.
Wow.
And all that stuff was gone, so you couldn't go back and look at the original evidence or
Right.
anything. It was already gone. So
Right.
You just had to kind of rebuild it in your brain.
You had the story, yeah, about what was there. And that was one of those moments that I was like, this guy is amazing. And his ability to be laser focused on small details and his ability to also step back and see the big picture. So I'm still very impressed, even in 1968. And, this is not far from where I grew up. That's another thing that I think that's one of the only reasons Todd agreed to talk to me is because I said I was from Kentucky. I waved the Kentucky flag and he's like, oh, I'll talk to you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I love Kentucky, and I lived there for the first 27 years of my life, and about 45 minutes, I guess, north of Georgetown. And it's such a beautiful, yeah, I lived in Florence and Independence, but Georgetown's beautiful area. And when Wilbur found Barbara on the side of the road, it was Route 25, which was, not that built up then and is obviously a very big, still used as a pretty big major artery, even if it's changed the way it looks, its landscape. But she was so small. Barbara was like 5'1" and, 110 pounds. And I understand why law enforcement thought maybe she was much younger than she really was. She was in reality, 22 or 23 when she was.
Yeah, I think she's just under 24. And
yeah.
But people see the descriptions of some of those bodies from that time period, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and what they're thinking is a scientific description of somebody based on a lot of different things. With
Right.
somebody, so that's a small person, it must be a child.
Right.
So there might not have been a forensic anthropologist or somebody from toxicology that actually looked at a person. A lot of assumptions were made because of a lack of resources. So luckily I knew that. I live in a small town, so I know how those things can kind of go with guessing. They were going at least 100 miles an hour. They would guess. There was no scientific
Right.
proof with any of that. So that was the part you have to kind of look through that. Like, you can't let that be your border. If I let that obstacle, we could not have resolved that case.
Well, that's what's so incredible is that you saw what was presented, but you didn't let any of that put you in a box as far as thinking. You saw, the information that she's a petite, small person, but you didn't put parameters on it like, well, she's petite, so she must be a teenager or, a preteen or whatever. You were like, oh, she could be a small, adult, and here's a cloth on her shoulder. Perhaps she's had a child. Yeah, perhaps she's a mother. Maybe it's not a child. Maybe she's, older than we think, and she's got kids. And if she has kids, they're missing her. And you are really working hard on finding out who this is. Do you remember the moment that you get a message from Rosemary Westbrook, or did you find her first?
I found her, when we collided. I'll say that we collided. When I built the website, girl, I would have thought that, I thought, okay, I did it now, and I put information in there, like describing that maybe she could be older. My father-in-law actually saw her body. He saw her body. He said her breasts were large, and he didn't feel like it was a young child.
Right.
He saw her painted fingernails that had chipped off in the bag, and he thought that maybe this was somebody that was a little more mature. So I thought, season that in with my thinking, with the way. And then I thought, well, you know what? I put it out there. Now somebody will come to me. So I honestly thought. So I was naive, too. Even though you think maybe I was a forward thinker, I thought, okay, I planted it, and now they will come.
Right.
Still didn't come. Well, they didn't come.
Right.
So I had to keep looking. And then luckily, the website did have a purpose in the end, because once I saw Rosemary, actually Rosemary and two of the daughters had wrote separate messages on the website, like Crane and Hibbs was the name of the website. It was the Craigslist of the day. And it literally had houses for sale. It had this, it had that. It was just a hodgepodge of everything. And I found Rosemary's first, and I knew the name, everything. Even that notice was familiar. I thought, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
That's exactly what happened. That's it. I knew then that, there was a different feeling at the time. It's like suddenly the poles shifted again, and it's like, okay, we're going into a past tense phase of this. And it's just like, you could feel these changes, but I didn't understand them. But it was like, wow, it's over. This part's over.
Wow.
I didn't know what was next. But it was truly, I knew my search was over at that point. Now it was, okay, now prove it. That's how we're going to do it. So me trying to type a letter to her, and I ended up finding her, I think, through one of her friends that had wrote another letter on that. I think her name was Glenda. I'm not sure, but it was somebody else that I ended up emailing, and she finally got us connected. It was in the middle of a blizzard in January.
Of course.
That year. Horrible year. The phones were unreliable, and it would take you forever to get dialed up on the internet. Like kids today don't know what dial-up was.
Right.
You'd have to get on the net. Literally, you'd have to jump on it, and then somebody would call you and knock you off.
Exactly.
My mom would always call knock me off the internet, and I thought, if you knew how long it took me to get onto the internet. It's like trying to, like a Ouija board or something.
Right.
It's just like I just got on this wavelength and somebody knocked me off, So it was crazy, but it did. It just all seemed like it was just like you was acting out the scenes of a movie that you just kind of knew what to do next. It was like, oh, okay, so here's what happens next. And I remember Rosemary saying, what happens next? I said, I imagine there'll be a DNA test. And the next thing we know, fast forward, here we're doing something else, and there's DNA testing, there's calls from the sheriff, and, and the first phone call from the sheriff was he only really called me back because it was my father-in-law that found the body.
Okay. Interesting.
So we had a lot of small talk at first, because he had known that there were several Kentucky State police officers that worked on it, and you're this young kid, in my 20s. I thought, okay, so you think you got something. And then when we had that conversation, his demeanor changed, and he was on Who Killed Jane Doe with me, and it all changed. It's like, I think you might have something. So,
it's like I can see, I'm not very visual. I'm much more auditory, which is why I host a podcast. But I can see a plug going into an outlet. It just feels like you plugged. And sometimes, certain plugs don't fit into certain outlets. And it just felt like you just kept plugging into an outlet all these plugs until you finally have such a connection. All of it is connected. I mean, and when you think, looking back all these years later, you have to think, how did this happen? Somebody up there has to be helping, orchestrating, whether it's Barbara, whether it's a bigger force, whether it's all that kind of energy together. But the fact that Rosemary is still looking for her sister, was it 1998? And and she finds you and you find her, and what is really the infancy kind of the internet for that kind of use, for sure. And I feel like it just propels everything forward in a very fast way. And the fact that there was a DNA test and you found out who it was, I can't even imagine. You probably just knew already at that point what the results were going to be, but was there anything that happened when you found out the results that was just like, was it a relief or just like, oh, no, that's the way it was supposed to be?
Well, of course it's relief, because you have to think, like, what if the DNA was old? What if this? And everything did seem, looking back at the phases of this, when I have these telephone calls, interviews, and I read an article from a long time ago, it seems highly coordinated, highly choreographed. And I'm thinking, like,
I love that.
That wasn't me that picked that moment. It wasn't me that picked. It was just like Forrest Gump. He just kind of felt, you're the millionth customer. And I was like, okay, here I am. So it was a strange world. It's just like, is this the way life really is? Do you just stumble through it and the next thing happens, and then the next thing happens? But life has really been like that. It's almost like...
Well, Todd, I just have to say, there is an old expression that luck is the residue of design. And I think this is a result of your work. If you weren't there, if your intention was not there, I don't think any of this would have happened.
Maybe it's the intention, that Todd's intention was so big that it was going to happen no matter how long it took, no matter what needed to happen. The internet advances, DNA testing. I can't, when you said that you spoke to some Kentucky State Police, and they were just like, okay, kid, what do you got? I still go back to, 1968 when she's found. And one of the parts of the story that just, it fills my heart and breaks my heart a little bit is that a Covington, Kentucky police officer was a pretty good artist and spent 5 days with Barbara's remains, making a sketch of her. And he did a pretty damn good job.
He did. And it was, and that was part of it. Like, did his photograph directly identify her? No. But it was part of it. It was part of what created the magic in that case. That case had, just for lack of a better word, there was a magical element to it.
Right.
And it was part of it. So even though it didn't work the way forensic art was designed, it was a part of that magic ingredient that made that case be what it was. And that's why I try to, say it was very inclusive of a lot of different talents and a lot of different people. Like, I didn't solve that case, not by myself. He helped solve that case. Rosemary helped solve that case. We all worked together, and I think maybe I was like you said, the choreographer. It's like I was the one saying, I think this. So I was the person that was just walking with the flashlight.
You're the mayor. Yeah, you're the mayor of Barbara's Village. You're right. It did take, I always think it takes a village. I really do, for most anything. I don't think there's ever one element that makes everything click. But I think sometimes there's a more important or bigger element, and not to say that someone else isn't important, but I still think that you're the mayor of Barbara Village. I really do. I can't help but think that a willingness to not give up, maybe take a break, regroup, find something else, and keep moving forward is the thing that helped get this solved. And I'm also so overwhelmingly touched by the town, Georgetown. They took care of her. They made her a resident and took care of her as their own, which is rare. And the beautiful headstone that was donated and the picture on it and the details. I'm sure there are other cases like this across the country, across the world, but this one just feels so different to me. It just feels like there was you're making it all make sense in my mind now. I just feel like there were other things in play that made this turn out the way it was going to turn out. There were bigger forces that maybe we can't see that made this turn out, the way it did. And I'm so grateful that her family got some sort of answer after all those years. What I am angry about, and I know that, there's only so much we can do as human beings, is that her husband died before a deathbed confession or admitting what happened, because he had done this. The reason he met Barbara is he'd done this to his first wife. Allegedly. done this to his first wife. So George Earl Taylor, is working as a carny, and he has a child, and Barbara wants out of a large family with, very small house and not a lot of money. And she's beautiful, and she's intelligent, and she's competent, and she's loving. And she, takes George's daughter and treats her as if she was her own. And then they have, a child together. And she's doing all the right things, and he's doing all of the wrong things. And I don't know how someone dies of cancer. How do you die of cancer and not tell what you have done?
He did give them enough information to piece it together. He had gave little bits of information. He helped the children, his two daughters, find their biological aunt.
Okay.
He gave them enough information so that they could maybe at least find each other. He wasn't going to let them solve the case. But now here's another little chill bump part of this. He died the month and year that I met Lori. He was dying as I was discovering.
Oh my gosh.
He was dying.
October of 1987. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. Wow.
It was during that time period that he was leaving this earth when I was coming out of the story. And Barbara and I never existed on Earth at the same time.
Right.
That is a chill up the spine.
I know. I just got totally, the hair on my arm stood up.
Kind of scary. And it was just like, that's not something I could have selected. Like, hey, let's make this part of the story. This is a cool thing. What if, those are things orchestrated somewhere else by another power.
Yeah.
I just feel like something pushed us all together. And I have to wonder, like, I don't know why Lori's daddy was the person that found her. I don't know why they moved here. And
right.
I don't know why I'm the one that found that piece or become infatuated with it. I feel like maybe one day I will know why. I think that somebody's going to, if I go to heaven, hopefully Paul Harvey's there with the rest of the story. So I'm hoping he's ready to tell me. But I do think there'll be a greiter realization at some point in my life that, this is the reason.
I just think it is your life. I think there may be a bigger, answer at some point on this plane or another plane, however this goes. But I think we don't even need to look for it, because it is your life. It's not who you are, but it's what you are. It's what you're doing. It's what you're doing right now. And it's amazing how it has taken your life and in what ways it has moved you and what you have done. So tell me when you started the Doe Network and with your partners, and is that the first organization that you started in hopes of trying to find unidentified people?
It was, and that was accidental too. Like, I don't think anybody sat down to think that we're going to start an organization, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We just did what we did. Like, I had a Yahoo group. It was one list at the time, and it was cold cases. So being that one guy had it, because I'd never really talked to crime junkies up until that point in time, because I didn't consider myself a crime junkie, and I'm still not. That's not.
No, it isn't you.
Part of the story.
No.
I'm not somebody that is a consumer of true crime.
Right.
Like, I don't go get all the books. I don't listen to all the shows. It's a reality.
It's
for
a
me.
different,
It's
yeah.
It is. It's a different thing. It's not that I'm not interested. It's just that that's what it is.
No,
That's part of who I am.
You're a different animal, because I am, somewhat, true crime obsessed and have been since I was a child. And I was more into the psychology of what would make a human being think they could take another human being's life. Like what causes that? Is it nature versus narcissism? Is it, were they abused as a child? And I got to the point where I'm not even sure I care anymore. I'm sorry if bad things happen to people, but you don't get to take another person's life. I don't care who the hell you are. So you're the guy who is like, I'm going to find out who this person is. I don't care, you care who did what to them, but it's more important to you to find out, to give them their identity back, to give them their name, to find out who they are, who they belong to, who's missing them, who has been without them. You let the punishment be, dealt with other people. That's
that was their baby, their say. But my desire for her was to send her home. And, and I was thinking more in a physical way. I thought, if her body soon should be sent to wherever. She was always home.
Right.
She was there. She just had to have her name, and they chose to leave her there. And I'm glad they did. Because
I am
that's
too.
One of the first shocks that I had when they exhumed her for DNA testing. I thought, oh no, they're going to take her away.
Right.
I had never thought of that before. I thought, I'm going to lose her.
Aww.
Here anymore. So, and you couldn't say anything because it was like, she's not mine.
Right.
She's not mine to have, and I was just fortunate to have her for a period of time. And but then when they said, they treated me very much like family. When we talked about the funeral, they, they looked at me like, well, you helped take care of her during this time period, and they treated me very much like family.
I bet. Well, you are now. So. Yeah.
Well, it is. It's just such a weird thing. There is a kinship with them.
There'd have to be.
With that family.
Yeah, there'd have to be.
Rosemary came here when my second son was born. They stopped by to visit one of the daughters. We were looking at names for his name's Devin Todd Matthews is my youngest son's name, and that was one of the names I'd written down on a piece of paper. And one of the daughters, Shelley, actually suggested it because they were pitching names at me too. Like, I'm trying to think of something, and that's one of the names. She liked the name David to go with Todd.
Wow.
And that was something, so it was like she parroted something that I had written down too, and I thought, that's got to be it.
That's it.
It has to be.
That's it.
And part of your family and from another place, they'll pick that. And I can't tell you, this is not, Tent Girl wasn't something I was infatuated with, and you think of that like and I have seen crimes that I have a strong desire to resolve them because it just really got me. Or it was a cruelty at a level like somebody has to pay for that.
Right.
Somebody has to ultimately. Tent Girl was a different calling.
Yeah.
Tent Girl was a whole different thing. It was like I needed to send her back to her family. I know they needed to know what happened to her. And I don't even know how to describe it other than that. And looking back today, I'm still waiting to go tell this story at the high school. I do this all the time. I go to the high school for their career days, and, I can tell them a lot of things about career day, like here's what a forensic anthropologist does. I'm not one, but I know how to use them. And here's what this forensic. I'm waiting for them to say, okay, that story's boring. The internet, it's like 30-year-old crimes are solved every day.
Right.
But they're amazing. Like when I went back, I dialed a phone that threw sparks. It was making sparks. That's how you connected. So when they go back and look at the technology, it's not like I sent an email. Back in the day, you sent an email, you done something.
Right.
And you attached a photo. It was like that was a piece of work.
And the photo takes 30 minutes to upload, right?
Barely, yeah.
And then you don't know if it went or not.
With 5 pixels, yeah. Yeah. You're like, is that a person? Is that a tree? I can't. Yeah. Yeah. Sending pictures. I remember. Oh my gosh. And I remember. Yeah, dial up. I remember my first computer was dial up. But even further back, and this is disturbing, this was even up into the 90s in certain parts of the country, a phone call to like someone 5 miles down the road was considered long distance.
Yes.
I mean, and
I remember the next community being a long distance from here. It was a toll call less than 20 minutes away from
right. As a little kid, in Kentucky, in northern Kentucky, and a lot of family members lived, more toward central Kentucky, we would only be able to talk on Sundays. I think Sundays rates were cheaper. And you had to kind of make a date and a time, and my grandmother would stand there with a watch to make sure, like if I needed to talk to a cousin or wanted to talk to a cousin, it was like, so you can talk for this amount of time because, we're going to have to sell a kidney to pay the bill or whatever. I mean, and to think that, you're not like calling, people just to chat about the weather. You were spending money, time, energy, and the money I know means nothing, but at the time it did mean something. But you're spending all of these resources that you have on this case. I mean, there is no other way to say it except that it was divine. It was just divine that, it was supposed to go the way it was going to go. So I found some great books, I think. What do you think of The Skeleton Crew? The 2014 book with Deborah Halber?
Of course, I spent a lot of time with her on that book. You know, that was she had to get a commitment from me that I was in.
Right.
I'm in on this. I'm going to commit to it and be part of it. And it was many, many interviews, many, many trips that we went on together. A lot of adventures. She, started and ended with my father-in-law, and she done a really good job of. And I've seen mixed reviews about that book, but she wrote it the way that I described it to her, so it's very accurate. It just might not. Maybe the process is not as thrilling as people think that it is. So that's it. So if they're disappointed, they might be disappointed because if there's no. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of commitment. It's not something like, oh, this is cool, this is so much fun. I mean, there's a lot of boring nights where you're sitting there and you're very disappointed because you went fishing and you didn't catch anything.
Right.
And it's just like, I feel like I wasted my time. So it wasn't all cool, fun things. There was a lot of disappointments, a lot of letdowns, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of arguments because of a phone bill. And it's like, oh, my God.
Right.
You know, it's stressful. I mean, there's a lot of stress involved in that.
I thought the book.
If you look at it as an
well done.
analogy today, it was like going bear hunting with a switch.
I love your analogies. I was just thinking you went fishing and you didn't catch anything is a great way to put it. The book is entitled The Skeleton Crew, How Amateur Sleuths Are Solving America's Coldest Cases. And I thought it was well done. A really well done book. I haven't seen any bad reviews or even mixed reviews, but I think it's a really well done book. And I mean, I don't particularly like the term amateur sleuth, but I also think it's what a lot of people are attempting to do. And even with this podcast, which I did not start out covering cold cases or missing persons. I started out covering cases that had been solved because I loved knowing the details and wondering what happened and discussing why someone would do this. And then people kept emailing or calling and saying, would you please cover this case? And in some cases, it would be family members who would say, would you please cover my missing son or my missing family member? And I was like, oh, okay. And the passion and interest for me in that has grown exponentially. So it's so funny you'd mentioned Forrest Gump. I used that term a week or so ago, saying I just trip and fall. I trip and fall into stuff. I don't know how it happens. A lot of times I've lived my life that way, and it sounds like you're that way too. And I don't want to say we're Forrest Gumps because I know we're both smarter than that. And wear better clothing, but I think we can be focused, and we just follow the path that we're on, and it turns out to be, hindsight. It turns out to be so much more interesting and different than we thought it was going to be, and it went in different ways than we thought it would go. And that's one of the things I admire so much about you, is that you have an understanding that it does take a village, and you understand that wanting to be helpful doesn't make you wanting to go through the police academy and be in law enforcement, but you understand the relationship with law enforcement. And like you said about the book, maybe there are parts that people find uninteresting. The part that you are searching for something and looking so deeply and you're not getting the answers, but then boom, there's an answer, that appears, and it makes all of those crappy fishing trips where you got no fish, it makes it all worthwhile when something shows up, and you just keep working. That's the thing, is that you keep working and you have the best of intentions. That's the other thing I think that makes it the story even more beautiful, is that you are who you are and you have the best of intentions. And that's a beautiful thing.
Well, it's like you get up and start all over again. It's like rinse and repeat. And I think that's what you want to be an amateur sleuth or any type of cyber sleuth. That's the part that's not so fun. That's
right.
The part that's not cool. And that's when a lot of people just says, well, I thought this was going to be more interested in that. And it's like, no, there's some fun moments where you do things and you get something that goes on television like Who Killed Jane Doe, but, most days you don't catch anything.
Right.
Most days. It's the glory of the days that you do catch something that is remembered in history. The days that you sit there and thinking, wow, I just wasted an entire day there are days that I look back on all that time I spent in that chair looking for tent girls, and I feel like, it's justified.
Yeah.
She was sent back, but I think, that's a day I didn't go see my grandfather. That's a day that I this or something like that, and because it was years.
No, I know.
I just have to say it was college. I didn't go to college. I have to say that was just my college.
That was absolutely college. That was in the best and worst way possible. That was your college for sure. For sure. So I know you're not the kind of guy who says, people do things that are not recommended, but what do you think citizen sleuths are doing right nowadays, and what do you think they can do better?
I think the sharing of the stories are the best thing, and that's what if people ask me how can I help, it's just like, well, we're usually not digging graves, we're usually not doing this. I think sharing those stories, I learned that when you share those stories, you're putting a demographic out there in news media. I've had them come back like, wow, that story was really popular, I want to do another one. That's how, instead of talking them into it now, you make it a popular story, and it's like you make it the soup of the day, and people are going to come back. That's how you do those things. And I think doing it, I've had people that said they wanted the fame. There is a degree in this certain little market of people. It's like you're very well known for doing this, or you get people that will thank you, or even doing a podcast like this. You do have people that appreciate what you did, and that's great. That's wonderful. But if you're doing it because that's what you want, then you're not doing it with the heart. I never thought I was going to get anything.
Right.
Never thought there would be anything out of this other than be called a fool and spend some money. That's really all I ever thought. I never did any of this with any intention on thinking I would profit or be well known in any way. I was totally naive. I had no idea. And
it's a much bigger calling. It was a much bigger calling.
People thought that's not the goal. I mean, if that's the goal, then maybe that's not
Right.
Like what you're doing is great. You set out to do a podcast, and that's wonderful. That is your goal. That is your intention. But if people are trying to solve a case that's a famous case, and then they'll become famous as a result of it, that lightning might not strike, and you might waste a lot of time. That was not the intention behind Tent Girl. I simply merely wanted to send her home. There was another case, another John Doe that was mentioned in that story with Tent Girl, and his grave was near Tent Girl. And his was from 1921, I think. And I first stood and looked at his grave at 17 years old.
Wow.
I saw his grave again when he was reburied next to his mother at 47.
Wow.
So there was a 30-year span in there.
Wow.
So when people, you want it done fast, it's just like I had to live like 3 lifetimes.
Right.
That was, I had no children. I was a child. And then when he was reburied, I was a grandfather.
Right.
That's a lifetime commitment.
That's amazing.
Like that.
Yeah, that is a lifetime commitment.
I just had to let him go,
Right.
And there's a story in the ad of it called Some Mother's Son that you can read. It's out there for people to read. And it was an amazing adventure, to be able to go back and think, look in the mirror today, I'm 49. I was 47 then. And, I don't think I'm old, but, 50 is coming, and you look at yourself and you think, I have transformed from a child to a grandfather. And there's still so many mysteries that have not been revealed. And I do want to change some things. I no longer work for NamUs. That's a chapter that's went behind me, and I realize there's another before me. Television, I got some telephone calls from television right after leaving NamUs, and it was opportunities that I couldn't have discussed if I still worked with the government. So it was almost like, wow, you picked this week to call me and ask me. So I'm looking at things that are scripted and unscripted. I think that's what I can do now to do things better. The science is there. Some of the scientists are automated to the point they're free. I think the next thing that I can do well is things that I like to think I can do well, and it's tell a story. So
that's it.
That's what I need. And I'm a grandfather now. It's a different phase of my life. Now people are not coming to me for the cutting-edge science. They're not coming to me to tell me how to build a website or help me attach a picture, which was what I was getting from law enforcement at first. They were literally bringing me their John and Jane Doe. Can you help us get this online?
Wow.
And that was a period that was necessary. Now it's routine in their offices. So my role as that person is I've never been hardly been able to describe it. I'm no longer needed in that capacity. It's become normal process. So I have to evolve too, So it's like now I look back and I thought, wow, look at all those wonderful stories that we can retell. And I've never thought I was particularly good at a website designer. I made some, but they were crude. It's just like it'll get the job done. It'll get you there. Is it the best, slickest, most polished? No, but it'll get the job done.
Well, listen to you. What you said was, when we started, you said what Wilbur was doing was telling his daughter and his future son-in-law a story. He was telling them the story about what happened to him, the experience he had, what he found. And you are an excellent storyteller. You are that. I think that is the biggest gift of everything you have done and you still have to do. It's the fact that you are a master storyteller. And that's, who knows what you might be doing in the future, so many things, but I know you're not ever going to lose the gift of being the mayor of the village and the master storyteller. So I am just so thrilled that you took the time to talk to us, and I don't have any other questions, but if you have anything else you want to tell us.
Well, that's my next look. This is the year that I turned 50. And I've been dreading it and looking forward to it. Way. It's a milestone. You're going to turn 50 this year, so.
And you know what sucks is that you look like you're 30. So shut up. How about that?
I sleep in Tupperware. So oh no, you try. If you're going to do anything on television, if it turns gray, you color it back. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm going to disrupt aging and fight it every step of the way. If I, because I don't, you don't want to get older, but I think my next chapter is going to be telling these stories through nonfiction and fiction.
Yeah.
Never, documentary style, scripted stuff. I've talked to a lot of different, and I've got some really, really good prospects going right now. So that's what I'm hoping. If I can get some positive energy from your listeners, that's going to happen. That's what I've always wanted to do, and I think that's like this is your life. This is what you've been going for. This is going to be the last thing. You've helped develop programs. You've helped fix the science as much as you can. You've helped people that didn't understand things. What I really want to do now is just sit down and tell these stories and get them all out there and make people understand why that case was important and what little anomaly made it really special. And I think we don't always see that come through in the articles, but I remember a lot of these things. So while I'm still have my mind, while I still have it, you don't know how long you're going to have it, I want to spend from this point forward as a grandfather telling these stories and putting them together and helping people understand why they're special. And then what's the new technology now? What's the new breakthrough use of a tool that was designed for one thing, but you use it for another? And that's human nature here. Where I grew up, and it wasn't because of you didn't have any money, but you used what you had to make things work.
Right.
So adapting something for another purpose was common. So I didn't just see the internet as just a thing for this. It's like, oh wow, it can be used for this. You improvised a lot of things. If you didn't have something, you made it, or you adapted something to make it work. So we're all toolmakers here. My dad and. It's like, okay, I need something, so I'll make it.
And you're problem solvers. That's it.
Yep, you just fix it.
You're like, fixers. Okay. You're the fixer.
Well, and that might be a good thing. It's like you try to fix it. If you find something that's broke, you try to fix it.
Yes.
My dad will walk through my yard. I have a shovel that had the handle broke out. He took it, fixed it, and brought it and put it back where he had it.
Wow.
Where he found it. Literally, he would take it away and go fix it. If he comes in and he sees a frayed cord or something, he immediately starts taping it up and I do the same thing mostly to my kids.
It's in your DNA.
It's just like, I'll get rid of that. I'll fix that. So that's what I want to do. So that's my hope and dream is to tell these stories, do shows like yours. I think this is what I want to do. Don't think that I did something as a favor. I love this. I love having this conversation with you. It's getting me closer to where I want to be and what I want to do.
Well, I definitely feel like the lucky one. But I am so grateful that the mayor and the fixer took some time out of his busy day to talk to us. You are a joy, Todd Matthews, and thank you so much for being here. And I don't think any of us can even imagine what's going to be happening. And I think we're all just waiting. We're all cheering for you. And this is going to just be awesome. I know it's going to be awesome. Thank you for being with us.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys, both of you. Thank you so much for spending time with me today.
Thank you, Todd Matthews, for spending time with us and telling us again the story of what happened in your life and I'm so excited of what's going to happen in the future. Todd is just an exceptional human, and I am really grateful that he took the time today to talk to us. And if you have any information on a case that you would like us to know about or a case you would like us to cover, feel free to email us at jttipsters@gmail.com. You can call us and leave a voicemail anonymously at 832-847-7837, and more cowbell.
And you can also support the podcast by going to patreon.com/just the Tip-Sters.